Warning, this video contains spoilers concerning the beginning, middle, and end of Bioshock Infinite. If somehow you have not finished this game and want to, please change the channel. Furthermore, MoldyCrowProductions is not responsible for anyone's acceptance of the game's ending, and logic getting owned in this video by Matt and Josh. Disclaimer. The opinions expressed in this video do not necessarily reflect those of Aaron's third of MoldyCrowProductions. Aaron is willing to accept the reasoning used in the game, but was merely upset with the fate of the characters. Please enjoy.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to a very special episode of MoldyCrowProductions. Let us rant. Bioshock Infinite Edition. A game came out, a game called Bioshock Infinite. It had a story, and it was weird, and people didn't like it, and some people did like it, and people said it didn't make sense. We fall into the third camp. Today, we're going to tell you why Bioshock Infinite does not work.
In any universe.
Especially this one.
Oh. So yes. Okay, so first off, time travel. Time travel, if you're going to mess with it, try to do it correctly. Bioshock kind of doesn't. Okay, first off, there's really only two kinds of time travel that you can deal with. First kind of time travel is if somebody invents a time machine right now and goes back in time 50 years and changes something and then comes back to the present, nothing will have changed. This is because everything, every choice, everything is already set in stone. You can't change the future, and there's no possible way to do so. So that would be the first school of thought for time travel. Second school of thought for time travel is, I shudder to use the word alternate reality, but yeah,
No,
okay.
that's okay.
Oh, okay, no, sorry, it's alternate universe. We'll get to that later. Okay, so yes, the second school of time travel is alternate reality or parallel universe. I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry, parallel timeline. My bad. Parallel timeline. Okay, so in this school of thought, if you go back into time and you kill a bug, you could essentially wipe out all of mankind somehow. It's never quite explained how that works, but I'm just gonna go with it. So yes. Anyway, like Back to the Future. If you can make it through those movies, there are slight problems. But anyway, if you can make it through those movies, that would be like the second one. So, yes. Bioshock, I'm really not sure what they were trying to do with that. I know at some point they even go through time. I'm just assuming that they're kind of time traveling because the different universes are technically at different times for whatever reason. I don't know. Just go with it. Anyway, so yes, those are the two schools of time travel. And you gotta pick one and do it. Don't be Looper and pick both and screw them up. But that'll be a different video. That's not a game. Okay. Now, to explain multiple and parallel dimension theory, we go back to Matt.
So now I'm going to tell you about multiverse theory. First of all, the name multiverse theory is a misnomer. It is not an actual scientific theory. At best, it is a model, a way of describing how the universe works. It really was more of a thought experiment, and now sci-fi has co-opted it to use in storytelling. So, not a scientific theory, not generally accepted by scientists. So don't call it a theory. So today we're going to be dealing with the science fiction concept of the multiverse. You might have seen these in things like Star Trek, Stargate SG-1, or most famously in Sliders. But to look at this multiverse theory, there are really three general categories. There's the cosmological idea, there's the probability idea, and then there's the human choice factor. We're going to start with the latter. So a multiverse based on human choice. The idea is that every decision you make in your life generates a different universe. And this is always described in a binary fashion. So let's say Joshua is walking down the road and comes to a fork. Will he go left or will he go right? Will he go left or will he go right?
That was better. I was not going to mention that.
I'll restart there.
That was a different universe.
So let's say Josh is walking and he comes to a fork in the road. Will he go left or will he go right? Well, in universe A, he goes right and finds a pot of gold and becomes rich and rules the world. However, if he goes left in universe B, he gets hit by a car and dies.
I'll go with, what was it, right? Yeah, definitely right.
But this is an oversimplification because in the real world, you never have a strictly binary choice. Josh doesn't have to go left or right. He could go straight through the fork. He could turn around and go back the way he came. He could become Superman and fly up into the air. There's an infinite number of possibilities. So as opposed in the binary version, the universe is looked at as a binary tree. You're going along the path, you hit a point, you split, and now you have two universes. You go to another point, you split, and you get an infinite number of binary universes. Really, every one decision you make creates an infinite number of universes based on your infinite choices. And what's more, you're really making decisions every single instant of your life. So me waving my hand like this is a conscious decision. In another universe, I'm waving my hand like this, or like this.
Or not at all.
Or not at all. That universe is very far away.
Yes.
Thus, only using human choice, we already have an infinite number of universes. So, step 2, probability. There are lots of random chance in the universe. Take this die. It has 20 sides. I roll it. I got
6.
a 6. In another universe, I got a 14 and a 20. So any number on that die, I have a 1/20th probability of getting. The idea in probability multiverse is that there in the space of infinite universes, there are exactly 1/20th universes where I got a 6. There are another 1/20th universes where I got a 20. Thus, if I was playing D&D, in 1/20th universes, I just got murdered by a goblin. But in another 1/20th, I just got a critical hit and murdered them. And in one universe, my life is attached to my character's life, so I just die. So now, in addition to the infinite universes based on your choice, we also have an infinite number of universes based on random probability. So right now we have a lot of universes, and most people envision it as a tree with 1 billion branches on it. However, the third aspect of the multiverse is cosmology. Now, most of us know that the current scientific understanding is that the universe started in a big bang. And out of that spawn came all matter in the universe, and there are certain cosmological constants that govern our universe. Things like the speed of light, the gravitational constant. However, some physicists often ask the question, well, what if those constants were different? What would life be like? In the cosmological aspect of multiverse theory, it's the idea that there are an infinite number of universes that each have their own set of cosmological constants. So there is a universe where gravity does not exist. There is a universe where the speed of light is 60 miles an hour. Just think of all the crazy, horrible things that would do. So now we take our single tree of the multiverse, and now we have a forest of infinite trees. And that is the multiverse. Welcome.
Now we are going to briefly go through the plot of Bioshock Infinite. God help us.
And by briefly, we mean as short as it can take. So essentially, in the beginning, Booker DeWitt is an asshole. That's all there's to say. He went to Wounded Knee where he killed a bunch of people. He became a Pinkerton agent where he killed a bunch more people. He was not a nice guy. At some point, he experienced a pang of regret, and he went and considered getting baptized.
Are you ready to be born again?
I am.
Do you hate your sins?
I do.
Do you hate your wickedness?
Okay, so at this point, here's where we get to Booker's choice. The Booker that we all played as, or one of them, we'll get into that later, flipped out and decided not to get baptized, ran away from his little circle of buddies. He became a private investigator. Still not quite sure why he became a private investigator, but whatever. He got married to some random woman who was apparently not important. He had a baby, which apparently is important, and I guess the mother died during childbirth.
Meanwhile, in an alternate universe, Booker DeWitt chose to get baptized and was renamed Zachary Comstock. And he had some radical ideas about how to save the world. At some point, a woman by the name of R. Lattès discovers the multiverse and does a lot of weird physicsy stuff. Comstock finds her and uses her knowledge to create Columbia. Now, and then this is where the timeline starts getting a little shaky. At some point, they figure out how to open windows to alternate universes and travel between them. Lattès finds a male version of herself, and they all come together in Comstock's universe, and they're happy brother-sister. Meanwhile, Comstock's great vision is kind of destroyed during the Boxer Rebellion when he firebombs China from Colombia, and America is a little bit unhappy about that. So they secede, and Comstock decides he needs to burn the world and start anew. Unfortunately, he's dying due to exposure to multiverse. So he decides he needs an heir to do it. Problem is, due to exposure to the multiverse, he's also infertile and can't have a baby with his wife, Lady Comstock. So what's the solution? Find an alternate universe where he did have a kid and steal it. Thus, he opens a tear to R. Booker's reality.
Right. So, back in R. Booker's reality, he somehow gets into a tremendous amount of debt. How much debt is worth selling your kid? We will never know. But he gets into a tremendous amount of debt and decides, I'm going to sell my child to this random person in order to have it forgiven. So he meets other version Comstock and essentially sells his kid in some back alley, sells his kid in his office, ends up in the back alley because he decides at the last minute that he really can't go through with this, and then has a tug of war in between the two universes with his child, which results in the I was going to say decapitation, but I guess it doesn't work. Separation, we'll go with that. Separation of Pinky from Elizabeth, however you want to put it. Okay, and so after this, he goes crazy, sort of, understandably, brands the back of his hand with that AD that we all know from the game, and just sinks into some random depression that lasts for however long until the actual game starts up. Now, back to Comstock.
Meanwhile, Comstock has his heir, but Lady Comstock doesn't really like this random girl who appeared out of thin air, and she gets all mad, so in order to satisfy her, they lock the girl away in Monument Tower. Unfortunately, Lady Comstock is just a little too curious and snooping around, so Comstock has her murdered. Not too long afterward, Comstock starts to feel the Lattesses are also a liability, so he also has them murdered, but it doesn't go completely as planned. They sabotage their multiverse device in an attempt to murder them, but instead of getting murdered, the sabotage actually spreads them out over the multiverse, so they essentially become omnipresent and partially omniscient in the fact that they can essentially go wherever they want and look at whatever they want. Thus, now we have a pair of people in the multiverse who have their own agenda. They look into the future, past, whatever, figure out what happened, figure out what Comstock is planning on doing, and at least one of them decides that they want to do something about it. So how do you stop an evil person from using a girl to destroy the world? Well, you get her father to come save her, even if he doesn't know it.
Okay. So at this point is the beginning of gameplay. You come to in the boat, we all know, and with the Lattesses, who at the time you have no idea who they are. You go up and you end up in Colombia. You go through Colombia to rescue said girl who you are mistakenly under the impression is some random person who you have to kidnap to forgive your debt. And you eventually get her, you end up with the revolution, and we get to our first plot point, which is you have to get guns for the revolution with said girl in tow. So you end up chasing down Chen, the gunsmith, and then he gets killed. This would be a problem, not for the fact that we decided to do the whole multiverse thing, Bioshock. Anyway, so then we go through our first and utter step down the path that ends to this game's utter self-destruction. We go through the universe tear.
Chen Lin.
The body's gone. He was never here. It's another Columbia.
A different Columbia.
The same coin.
A different perspective.
Heads.
Tails.
Dead.
Alive.
We have to go through to this other Columbia, but
It's like riding a bicycle.
Never really forgets.
One just needs the courage to climb aboard.
So now you find yourself in the universe where Chen is alive, but somehow remembers he's dead. Unclear why. Brain hurt. So, okay, back. So you find him alive, but he has no tools. So your next mission objective is to find the tools. And you hunt through Shantytown and you find the tools, but suddenly you realize, hey, wait a minute, these are really heavy tools. How are we going to move them?
We sure as hell aren't gonna be able to carry all this back to the shop. God, we didn't think this all the way through. What is that?
it looks like a tear to another version of this room that doesn't have any tools in it.
If the tools aren't in there,
Then they must be back
back at the shop.
Well, the answer, of course, is don't move them. Go to an alternate universe where they were already moved or never even there.
We should have just gone to that universe in the first place. I would just like to point out.
Yeah, but she's not all powerful yet.
Yeah, but still.
So we cut to the Revolution timeline where Chen never died, he made the guns, and he has given them to Fitzroy. And so, of course, Booker's like, oh, good, now Fitzroy will honor our agreement and give us our airship that we never made a deal with her in this universe for.
And in fact, you're already dead in this universe.
So, plot hole explosion number 1. Ooh. So, the problem with this universe at the moment is that there was another Booker in this universe, and he left you a voxophone explaining how he tried to go get Elizabeth, but she had already been moved from Monument Island. So, what does that mean? Now we have another Booker who Fitzroy obviously thinks is an imposter, but we also have our Elizabeth. So technically, in this universe, there are currently 2 Elizabeths. One that Comstock already has, and the one you're running around with. Does your head hurt yet?
He's getting there.
So, you continue through this universe, happy-go-lucky. Eventually, you go after Comstock, and Songbird shows up. Now, Songbird shouldn't show up because Elizabeth is still in captivity somewhere, but he shows up, beats you up, and you go chasing after Elizabeth. But when you emerge at Comstock House, you're not quite where you used to be. So now that Songbird has Elizabeth, you, as Booker, are running to catch her, but when you get to Comstock House, instead of being in where you... So you go running up to Comstock House to save Elizabeth, but somehow you end up in a new alternate universe, which I like to call the Elizabethan Apocalypse.
So, in said Elizabethan apocalypse, you get brought forward in time to meet older Elizabeth, who is, at the moment, destroying New York City. So she brings you forward and essentially confesses that she, at the end of her life, is now very, very, I guess, grief-stricken over the choices that she has made and all of this. So she brings you forward from a point in another universe, in a different point in history, brings you forward to see what happens if you fail. No pressure. And essentially asks that you go back to your own universe in your own previous time that you had just come from to save your Elizabeth, or, well, it's unclear whether it's actually still your Elizabeth, but the Elizabeth that just happens to be in whatever universe you end up. So, she sends you back in time with the mission to save, not really her, but her, from ever having to get brainwashed and destroy everything on the face of the planet.
And here's where it starts to get weird.
Again. So, you get sent back in time. You are now in Comstock House. You fight through all of the crazy people, and you get to the big observation, I guess, what is that, like the observation surgery room or whatever, where Elizabeth is trapped. You go, you free her, and you essentially start to escape Comstock House and eventually get away with Elizabeth in tow. Okay, so at this point, Elizabeth decides she really hates Comstock, and now she wants to go kill him. And Booker essentially tags along just to try to keep her from getting killed. So, at this point, they go after Comstock. on his Zeppelin. They eventually get up to the Zeppelin. Might I say that was a very irritating span of gameplay there at that ship. Anyway, so they finally get to Comstock. Comstock is chilling by his little, I don't know, holy water holder, whatever you want to call it. Holy water cooler? That might be nicer. He's just chilling there, waiting for you. You finally get there, and you think he's crazy, and he goes off on some tangent where, you know, like, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you want to know what happened, ask him what happened to your finger, and everybody's just completely not even following. You lose it, and you essentially murder Comstock. You repeatedly bang his head into
She's your daughter, you son of a bitch! And you abandoned her! Was it worth it? Huh? Did you get what you wanted?
Booker.
Tell me!
Booker.
Tell me!
It is finished.
Nothing is finished!
Booker.
You locked her up for her whole life!
Booker.
You cut off her finger, and you put it on me!
Booker, stop it! You killed him.
Or,
Stone.
Stone, holy wooden.
The holy wooden water cooler.
The holy stone water cooler. There we go. So, you essentially kill Comstock. At this point, Elizabeth is like, what did he mean you know what happened to my finger? And you have honestly no idea. So then, we decide it's a good idea to break the siphon, which we now know about, which is essentially the rest of the tower that Elizabeth was held captive in, which essentially designed just to siphon off her god powers, for lack of a better word. And so you now take his airship and you set off to destroy the god siphon. Okay. So, I guess after another very irritable moment of gameplay on that ship's deck, you essentially get Songbird to destroy the siphon. And this is very pretty, very explosion-y. And you essentially end up wandering through the multiverse at this point, because Elizabeth has her god powers back. So, to explain the multiverse again, we go back to May.
So now that Elizabeth is superpowered again, she teleports us to an old friend, Rapture, where we viciously drown Songbird. Kind of depressing. And then we go up to the surface, and that's when Elizabeth finally finds the key that unlocks the multiverse. And we go on a nice stroll where we get to see all the alternate Bookers and all the alternate lighthouses and all the alternate alternates walking around. And Elizabeth makes some rambly statements about how no matter what happens, we always end up here.
Look.
It's us.
Not exactly. We swim in different oceans but land on the same shore. It always starts with a lighthouse.
I don't understand.
We don't need to. It'll happen all the same.
Why?
Because it does. Because it has. Because it will.
There's so many choices.
They all lead us to the same place.
And then takes you on a nice tour of your personal history. So this whole time, Booker has forgotten everything we talked about 20 minutes ago in this video. Now he gets to relearn it step by step. The baptism, selling the baby, and she and Elizabeth convinces Booker that the only way to stop this is to not just kill Comstock in one universe, but to kill all Comstocks in the entirety of the multiverse, which she very understatedly describes as millions and millions of universes. Try infinite universes. So, how do we kill Comstock? Well, we go back in time to the moment when Booker was making the choice between baptism and not baptism, and we drown him.
Who are you?
You chose to walk away, but in other oceans, you didn't. You took the baptism. You were born again as a different man. It all has to end, to have never started, not just in this world, but in all of ours.
Smother him in the crab.
Smother, 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 smother. Before the choice is made, before you are reborn.
And what name shall you take, my son?
Use Zachary Comstock. Use Booker DeWitt.
No. I'm both.
except we're not drowning that Booker, we're drowning you, Booker, who already chose not to get baptized. And so a bunch of Elizabeths show up from different realities and all work together to drown you to death so that Zachary Comstock is never brought into existence. And then we get a nice parting shot of all the Elizabeths slowly fading out except for yours. Cut to black and cut to credits.
Welcome to our discussion universe.
Yeah, this is the part you've all been waiting for, is when we tear Bioshock Infinite in twain.
Yes. So let's start off with the first place that Bioshock starts to go wrong, which is surprisingly not the beginning, but where we transfer into the universe where Chen is somehow still alive. Now, if you recall, we were looking for Chen so that he could make guns for the rebellion, so that we could overthrow Comstock. When we transfer into this other universe, Chen is indeed alive. But if he is not even married to the same person, how do we even know he's still a gunsmith?
Well, because essentially he has memories of when he was dead, and thus has memories of when he was a gunsmith. And he's certainly acting like a gunsmith, but there's no guarantee that the universe we went into, out of the infinite possibilities, who knows what universe we went into. It makes no sense to go into a random universe to try to find a guy alive to do what you want.
Also, assuming that all of this is true, his wife is now a Comstock fanatic, so odds are he would probably not want to make guns for the rebellion when his wife is clearly a Comstock supporter. So, that's kind of an issue. Later on, when we go find his equipment, instead of just moving it, even though, as we've said, probably might not have gotten guns from that universe. Oh, also, how do you even know you still need guns in that universe? It's never actually explicitly told. And even if he did, there would probably be another Booker and another girl running around trying to get guns for that universe's rebellion. So it's probably better that we left that universe pretty quickly. So then we end up in the... So he's still a gunsmith, but we don't need guns anymore because the universe we jump into actually already has the rebellion all done and played out, and you're already dead, so that takes care of the other DeWitt running around. However, like we said, the girl, not really important because she doesn't show up, but, she's somewhere. So anyway, so you show up, the other you is dead, and Fitzroy loses it, so you go through... Not much plot-wise to argue about here. It's already kind of screwed over. So now we come to the next plot point that's all messy, is when you get dragged into the future after Elizabeth is kidnapped.
Do we even want to touch on the whole Lady Comstock thing?
Oh, do you? I never really got the whole Lady Comstock thing, but by all means.
And so we go for a while without too many issues, and then we have the Lady Comstock incident. Now, besides it being a horrible boss battle that the internet likes to complain about, there is this whole aspect of, did Elizabeth bring her back to life? Did she bring a version through an alternate universe? The explanation is what's annoying. Elizabeth indicates that this version of Lady Comstock is a combination of the real Lady Comstock and her memory of Lady Comstock. Now, this is where we get very dangerous, because that would imply that Elizabeth is able to create new realities. But that doesn't really make sense in an infinite multiverse. The reality where Lady Comstock is like she is already exists. So it shouldn't be that she created a Lady Comstock that acted like she thought. She found a Lady Comstock that acted like she thought and pulled her into the universe for the boss fight. This is where terminology gets very tricky. Creation versus finding. In an infinite multiverse, all possibilities already exist. You can't create a new one.
Okay, and now we can go back to the future. Okay, so then Elizabeth gets snatched by Comstock, which I think we're still in the universe where he already has her, so it's not really clear why he kidnapped her. But, yeah sure.
Or by Songbird.
Yeah, well, so Songbird kidnaps her. That's very sad. So, then you get dragged into the future unexpectedly by older, different, Elizabeth. I was about to call her Anna, but same difference. Anyway, so you get dragged into the future. She says, go back, stop me from becoming crazy, psychopathic, world-ending harbinger of death. So, she sends you back. It's unclear, considering Elizabeth's given power is transferring dimensions. I guess she sent you back to the same dimension. She could have sent you back to any dimension, I suppose, but...
Especially when you consider in that dimension there were two Elizabeths running around. It to quote Daisy Fitzroy, it complicates the narrative. So it is plot-wise convenient to reset everything in a new universe where Elizabeth remembers Booker and did stuff with him, but has been captured by Comstock.
Yes. So, we get sent back to a universe that is convenient for the end of the plot, where Elizabeth was likewise kidnapped, and she is now being essentially experimented on / beginning to become brainwashed. So, you rescue Elizabeth. Elizabeth then says she wants to go kill Comstock. Logical response. You then go and kill Comstock, and he gives you that nice little nugget of, well, he knows what really happened to your finger, and then this leads you to wanting to go break the God Power Siphon. So, you break the God Power Siphon. And now we have a billion and an infinite number of Bookers and Elizabeths running around that lighthouse field for no good reason.
And this is where the game goes off the rails.
Yes, indeed. So,
where to begin?
Okay,
Okay, so I'll throw the first thing out there. While you're walking along the magically floating planks, Elizabeth says, "Oh, look at all these universe." Well, first she says, "There's always a lighthouse. There's always a girl," which in video games it's like, oh, kind of like it's reminiscent, like, oh, Bioshock. The little sisters were the girls. You were Booker DeWitt, which is nice and all, but in a multiverse, there are infinite universes where there was no lighthouse, there was no girl, there was no Booker DeWitt. So you can't say there's always a Booker DeWitt in a multiverse, because there will be a place where there is not a Booker DeWitt.
but you could say there was an infinite number of lighthouses and girls and Booker DeWitts.
And an infinite number of non-lighthouses, non-girls, and non-Booker DeWitts.
So, anyway, so we are running around, and she decides to show Booker everything that he had previously forgotten due to the time traveling.
Which is unclear whether you're being taken into an alternate universe where you get to relive it, or you're being traveled back in time so you relive it. But the game indicates you have no choice because you already did this.
Yes. Which also brings up an interesting point while you're crossing dimensions and learning your own history of, at the beginning of the game, it is believed that there were 123 DeWitts running around throughout the course of, well, before the course of the game that we all played, because of the heads tails thing when you first get into, I guess, that raffle area in the beginning. So it's believed that the Lutesses might have gone into many alternate universes with similar circumstances to recruit DeWitts, which have all failed. Now, assuming that this is true, or even assuming that all the times we have jumped universes with or without Elizabeth, you even ended back up in the same one, the Elizabeth that you're with may or may not actually even be your daughter. I mean, biologically, sure, but it's unclear whether or not she's actually the same person who we've even seen in most, if not all, of the game. So, anyway. So, you end up with, quote-unquote, your Elizabeth, and you go through your life, like Matt was saying, with either time travel or maybe she's just creating flashbacks somehow. I don't know.
This is the part of the game where Elizabeth's powers are kind of blown out of proportion, and you don't really know her limits. So maybe she's God, maybe she's just like a Neo, the one who can just see the whole multiverse and gets it. Or maybe she's crazy?
Maybe they're all crazy. Well, regardless, she goes through and tells you everything that happened. You then decide, I guess as the father you now know you are, you decide you want to undo all of this psychological torment and all of the damage that was done to most likely your daughter, and you decide, I want to go back in time and kill Comstock. Elizabeth then caveats this with, we should just kill all of the Comstocks.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little freaky. Elizabeth is not satisfied with killing a Comstock. She wants to kill all Comstocks in the entire multiverse. Which begs the question, is that even possible? Because you're essentially going to have to go and kill an infinite number of Comstocks in an infinite number of universes before they are generated. And in some versions of multiverse theory, the very act of interacting with a and in some versions of multiverse, the very act of intervening in a universe will spawn a second universe where you did not intervene. Thus, you would end up spawning an infinite number of Comstocks that you were trying to go and kill. This is where the brain hurts.
So, their presented solution to this problem is, let's drown the Booker DeWitt that you've been playing as the entire game.
And somehow this will kill Comstocks.
Yes, and this also creates a mess of trouble, because if you will remember, this involves time travel finally, and the point at which you apparently want to go back in time and kill kill DeWitt before he becomes Comstock. But drowning the DeWitt that has already chosen not to become Comstock shouldn't really have any bearing whatsoever on, I don't know, the past or the potential future for any of the universes you're trying to get to.
Yeah, you're killing a single Booker DeWitt who already made the opposite choice of the one you actually want to kill. Now, this gets where you've got to start making up powers for Elizabeth for the game to make sense. Because somehow the game's implying that by that symbolically drowning this Booker DeWitt, you are somehow drowning all Booker DeWitts, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Like how do you do that? How do you condense an infinite number of people into one person and drown that one guy?
And again, the only way I can think to come around this is that Elizabeth, again, now being God, and her other 5 God Elizabeths decided altogether that they were going to pool their powers and their energies to somehow collapse or maybe fold all of the infinite multiverses into like that one Booker DeWitt point and just maybe obliterate them all in one shot, which could potentially have worked.
Yes.
Maybe.
So what we're saying is Elizabeth nuked the multiverse.
Apparently. However, just in case you thought that was actually a resolution, turns out multiverse theory can screw with that too. Because if there were 7 or even more of, I forget it, I think it was 7. Anyway, no matter how many Elizabeths wanted to nuke the universe and destroy Comstock, there would have been just as many universes where Elizabeth, probably having been brainwashed, but not even necessary. I mean, there probably would have been just as many that wanted the universe not to get nuked, especially if they had been brainwashed by Comstock, because you're essentially killing her father.
So theoretically, at the end of the game, we should have had a climactic struggle between the infinite number of Elizabeths who wanted to destroy the multiverse and the infinite number of Elizabeths who wanted to preserve the multiverse, and they would get stuck in some equally paced battle of uber-powered ancient people.
Would essentially have turned into a zero-sum, absolutely nothing would have happened. But anyway, so given all this, there's really no good way that either of us can think of where Bioshock actually ends even remotely close to the way it says it's supposed to end. Not to mention the whole not really clear why Elizabeth has powers in the first place, but, you know, hey, I guess if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Something.
I mean, sure, you could try to twist and finagle it. I mean, it makes more sense that maybe she destroyed a pocket of multiverse. See, now I'm just rambling.
Yeah, no, not really clear.
It just doesn't work. It doesn't work, Ken Levine. What's your problem?
All things being considered, you probably should have just gone to Paris with your daughter. That would have been the better way to end it.
That would have been happy.
Would have been happy. It would have been nice. Not to mention that even assuming that you can somehow get around all the plot holes that we have been outlining, you've essentially destroyed all of the Bioshocks that were ever invented, and now none of them have ever occurred. So there's that too.
Yes, and will there? And this is the big question: is will there be Bioshocks in the future? According to the ending of the game, no. You murdered them all.
Yes.
You murdered your own franchise in your own game, literally.
He has paradoxed Bioshock out of existence. And while entertaining, I would have liked a little bit more logical sense in there somewhere, but hey. You could have just made new platformer, like a, new franchise of games. You didn't really have to go that far. But
I can just see Ken Levine now. I'm done with this franchise. No, you're not. Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to make it so in the story no more games can exist. Now what are you going to do? The answer is probably ship it off to whatever studio made Bioshock 2 and have them do the next Bioshock game.
Yes, or at the very least, I would like to travel to the universe where Bioshock 3 made sense.
That would be nice.
It would be.
Let's think about it.
That was amazing!